Public hearing. It's Tuesday, September 26th, and I am Majority Leader Taylor, and no roll call, correct? Everybody signed up. Please, everybody sign up. If people do come in late, I will let people sign up, and I'll give you, each person will have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, so when we kind of jump in, just try to, I know 3 minutes isn't a lot, but we have a lot of people here, so. So in attendance, we have, to my left, Councilman Sanchez, to my right, Councilwoman Anderbois, and that is the committee for now. So if I could have the list, and also, clerk, if you could read item number 1 into the record.
Communication from Mazzana, the mayor, dated September 1st, 2023, submitting the tentative memorandum of understanding between the City of Providence, Rhode Island, and Brown University, Providence College, Johnson & Wales, and Rhode Island School of Design for the period of 20 years commencing in 2023 and ending in 2043.
Also, I'd like to recognize in attendance, we have Councilman Goncalves, Councilwoman Peterson, Councilwoman Graves, and Councilman Oscar Vargas sitting at the wrong table. Thank you. And sorry, also Councilman Espinal is here.
Just the first page. Jill, just the first page.
So how we're going to do this is we're going to bounce back and forth. We're going to have people that are proponents and then people that are opponents, just so we can kind of even it out somewhat. So we're going to start with Michael Tillinghast. If Michael Tillinghast could please come up and use the microphone. Michael Tillinghast, is Michael Tillinghast here? Where? Michael Tillinghast, are you here? Come on down. The price is right. Okay, Michael, if you'd state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. And use the microphone, please. Turn it on, push the button to the right.
Hello. Thank you for your time. Welcome to this meeting. To lead, the people who are testifying against this bill. Oh, I'm Michael Tillinghast. I live at 144 Sumter Street in Providence, Rhode Island. So the people who are testifying against this bill think that Brown should pay more in taxes. My personal opinion is that, you know, it's great to have these organizations in our city, these schools in our city, but, you know, we need the tax revenue. But how come large schools are building at a whim while small businesses can't afford to get, you know, properties, and like established businesses are being evicted? Like a established restaurant just went out of business last week because they couldn't afford the rent. So how come the tax breaks are going to these schools while these small businesses are still facing the crunch? But, you know, to lead, the people who are testifying against this think that Brown should be paying more in taxes. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, I'm going to call up Sharon Steele.
Chairman Taylor,
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for the opportunity.
Please state your name and address, please.
My name is Sharon Steele, and I live at 95 Chestnut Street in Providence, and I'm the president of the Jewelry District Association, and 3 of these 4 institutions are in our neighborhood. So I spend a fair amount of time with them. We have dialogues on a regular basis, and I'd like to perhaps tell the audience here today something that they probably don't know about one of the institutions. I could talk about any of the 3 of them, at least the ones I know well. But what I'd like to talk about is part of the healthcare system, which is another part of what is happening in Rhode Island that is impacting all of us. And I'd like to talk about the $5,500,000 that Brown literally has contributed this year, having nothing whatsoever to do with either the MOU, obviously, or the MOA. And $5 million went to Women and Infants Hospital. And it went to Women and Infants Hospital because they needed a new birthing center. So for all the people who say that the institutions aren't doing things or aren't doing enough, I would simply like to bring some things to the attention of all the people here to talk about how important this $5 million was to the birthing center at Women and Infants Hospital. For those of you who don't know, 80% of the babies who are born in Rhode Island are born at Women and Infants Hospital. The birthing center was in, let's just say, not really good condition for the most important thing that probably happens in most people's lives. So if that number is 80% for all of Rhode Island, I would hazard a guess that it's probably close to 100% for all of the people who live in Providence. Because obviously, that is the closest hospital, and that is the hospital who specializes literally in births. The other thing that people probably don't know a lot about is the fact that every year preemies are born. And preemies are kids who obviously are delivered sooner than they are supposed to be delivered. And I have a fair amount of understanding about that because my younger brother was a preemie. So when he was born, and my mom was 6 months pregnant, he weighed 2 pounds, 2 ounces. And for the next 3 months, he was in that hospital, and every day was touch and go. So for people who are Catholics, he was baptized, he was confirmed, he got the last rites more times than I could even tell you at this point. But that $5 million that Brown gave us in this year is going to make a difference in our healthcare system, which is a system that is sorely underfunded right now. And I would like everyone here to understand that most of these institutions do lots of things that very few people know a lot about. So in addition to that infusion of cash, which women and infants desperately needed, to literally be able to do the work that they need to do.
1 minute left.
They also gave an additional $500,000. And I won't tell you where all that money went, but it went to literally service things that are utilized by all of these neighborhoods. And I thank you for your attention and for listening to the story.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next is Susan DeRita. Susan, if you could
Good
state your
evening.
name and address, please.
Susan DeRita, 100 Isabella Avenue. I'm a lifelong resident of Providence and 40 years in Elmhurst. I ask that you redefine the description of a community contribution to include a mandatory value, as the definition in the MOU is smoke and mirrors. The negative behaviors of the students from predominantly Providence College and Johnson & Wales who reside off campus on streets surrounding Providence College are no secret. Starting several years ago, police details were required to be hired to deal with controlling the adverse behaviors, since the colleges historically don't. It was and still is the actions of the students that necessitated the police expense to the schools. Police details made necessary by their inability to have their students be good neighbors should not be included. Let's ask the colleges to make real community contributions. Each of the colleges have beautiful facilities that, in the case of Providence College, aren't shared with the community. Neighbors are only allowed to walk on their outdoor track. This past spring, classes were held for younger children in dance and drama at a prohibitive cost to some families of $60. There was a time when swimming lessons were held and the boys in the neighborhood were allowed in during basketball practice to shoot with some of the great legendary players at no cost. None of this exists today. Everyone should take a look at different programs at other colleges. Locally, the Circle of Scholars program at Salve Regina as an example of community offerings. I would also like to address the single-family homes that have been taken off the tax rolls to make way for parking lots and are being rented out by the colleges. There are several single and multi-family homes owned by PC that are tax exempt that I understand are being rented. They own many more, but fortunately, they are being taxed. Residential properties owned by the institution should never be exempt. About 15 homes on surrounding streets have been demolished to make way for parking lots. Approximately 45 bedroom units have been lost. If we are truly interested in the housing crisis in our city, a fund should be established so institutions have to pay in the amount paid for each property demolished and reinvested so that the city can buy property to replace the units of housing. This would be a true definition of community contribution. It's time for these large schools to show they are true community partners. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next is Anthony Santuri. Welcome, Anthony. If you could state your name and address.
Good evening, everyone. Anthony Santuri, 180 Pine Street, Providence. A small business owner in the city of Providence. Thanks again to all of our council members and all of you for giving all of us this time. It's really very impressive every time you come here and you see, when you're my age, the youth behind me. I wasn't in City Hall when I was their age. I wasn't doing what needs to be done. But today, at almost 65, you know, I am here, and I have a different perspective than maybe I had then. Not that it's right or wrong, but it's different with the time we have. So I'm not going to quote to any of you who already know all the figures and the facts and how much money there is. It's more of a general passage of the pilot in the present negotiated form, which I think is what we need for our city for predictability. What we need to do now with our city, in my opinion, is we need to begin now to move forward with what we know we have. So when we're in small business, we know what our revenue might be, we know what can come in, we can predict what we can do going forward. Having partnerships with our universities and our nonprofits, as I do in my business also, is a great thing. What's really nice is when you do go and you ask your partners for more, and they give you more, and it's better. It's not everything, it's not all every single individual person wants, but in general, we have moved forward, we have raised up what was needed, and now we take that and we move the entirety of our city together. I know that there's a lot of passion in this room about very particular parts of what our city needs, and that is absolutely monumentally important. But at this time, for me, as a small business owner, a person who also cares deeply about this city, I think we need to lift up the entirety by moving forward and getting the business of what a city does done, that all of you have to do. loosening up on the hiring freeze, getting the people in place that we need to put here to make the decisions about these very important things that all of us want. I know that doing more and doing better is really the best path that I try to do as a business owner, and I'll always know that there's more everyone can do. So although there may be some missing parts here for some financial considerations moving forward, I think at this time, I would say it's time for the City of Providence to begin doing the business for the people of the City of Providence. Thank you again, always.
Thank you for your testimony. Next is Jamise Longlow. Actually, Janice, probably, right? I said your name wrong.
Janice.
Janice, I'm sorry. If you could state your name and address, please.
Janice Longo. I live at 162 Orm Street in Smith Hill. I have lived in Providence and was born at Lynan Hospital. Yes, I was. And I don't have a lot to say because I don't understand the concept of a lot of this, because I feel like the agreements work. Does the agreement work for the taxpayer? Is my question. It's hard to tell because so much information is missing. And my concern is the city is nothing without neighborhoods. You are nothing without neighborhoods. If we didn't have neighborhoods, what would you be? We are the people who make up this city. In all my life, I've been trying to work with people and help people, whether it's homeless or needing an apartment or someone who's on the street and doesn't know what to do. But the truth is that the mayor said when he was running, and he said it to me because I met him, I want quality of life in my city. I don't see that so much. And the whole issue of a general fund makes me crazy. Because what is a general fund? To me, it says that the city can do what they want. And I think that some of this money has to go back into our neighborhoods. It has to go back into our neighborhoods. I don't know how else to say this. And I don't know whether it's a percentage. I don't know whether it's a, let me just say this. Some neighborhoods are better than others. They might not need as much. I don't know every neighborhood in specifics about what they need, and they should be up here today. But I know Smith Hill often gets dumped on, in my opinion. We go up, we go down, we go up, we go down, but there's a level that I would like to see. And so some of this money from these taxes, or from this agreement, I think should be put into the neighborhoods. And I just want to add one last thing, and I want to say a little bit about what Susan said. Yes, we all look at Brown, and they have billions and billions and billions. PC has billions too. I don't know what Johnson & Wales is. I don't know what their endowments are, but we need to ask them for more. They're in the neighborhoods. They're right there with us. A woman just the other day got beat up by a PC student who banged in her door, punched her in the face. Now, PC expelled the student. That's not enough for me. The fact that it happened is another whole issue. So I want to encourage the city council people and the mayor to think about neighborhoods. Think about what we need in these neighborhoods. I can't walk down Elm Street without the sidewalks up and down, the trees are uprooted. You couldn't push a baby carriage. It's awful. And so I asked the mayor and I asked the city council to please look at this and think of our neighborhoods as the light on the hill for the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I'd like to also acknowledge Councilman Justin Royas, who showed up. Thank you for coming, sir. Next is the last name looks like Bonanno. The first name I cannot read. I'm sorry.
30 Benefit Street.
30 Benefit Street. Okay. Was Vincent? Is that what it is? All right, thank you. If you could state your name and address and...
30 Benefit Street, Providence, 02904. UONANNO, sorry about my penmanship. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to express my support of the proposed memorandum of understanding between the City of Providence and specifically, thank you for allowing me to express my support of the proposed memorandum of understanding between the City of Providence and specifically Rhode Island School of Design. I'm here in my capacity as president of the Mile of History Association, a not-for-profit neighborhood group which supports the restoration and maintenance of the Benefit Street area, which we call the Mile of History because of the length of the street. A large part of that visitor attraction is RISD and RISD Museum, with more than 3,000 students, faculty, and staff on campus, and more than 100,000 visitors to the RISD Museum each year. RISD and its museum are undeniably important to the city, as well as to neighbors. Staff from both the institution and the museum have been engaged with our organization since its inception, which is a century old. They first began collaborating with us, the Rhode Island Historical Society, as representatives of Congress of Convention Bureau and the City Arts and Tourism Department to coordinate the historic and cultural organization on Benefit Street. They have absorbed alongside MOHA and other organizations, including the Providence Preservation Society, about safety conditions on the street, including tracking down landlord violations, trash removal, and improved lighting and pedestrian areas. Earlier this year, President Crystal Williams and the museum director, Sarah Gantz, wrote a letter of support of MOHA's efforts to secure funding for signage, as well as the repair and replacement of sidewalks along the historic street, particularly those that are not in compliance with ADA. This is all beyond the day-to-day maintenance of RISD's facilities, crews, which help with several other things and helps with including snow removal, trash removal, and other attractions. I share these examples as the importance of the relationship with RISD, an example of how, as neighbors, we simply can't take one another for granted, and the importance of this institution to our city. It aligns the priorities of both the city and RISD and incentivizes future growth. It provides the city with predictable long-term financial support in the intermediate term with the hiring and firing freeze show for city services to function. And finally, it recognizes the broad range of ways that RISD is engaged with our community. In today's there's no denying institutions and their local governments need to look to one another for creative ways. The MOU does just that. I truly believe it provides a predictable setting for financial support as well as a sound structure for increased community engagement with the RISD example. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Michael, it looks like Z-I-E-S-L-E, Zelsi. Sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Michael, if you could state your name and address, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My name is Michael Ziegler, and I live at 24 Medway Street. I'm here in my capacity as political director for the Graduate Labor Organization. We are the labor union representing over 1,000 graduate student employees at Brown University. And my comments will focus mainly on Brown University as a result of some of the relevant experience I have and Brown's position within these agreements. Many members of our union are residents of Providence. Like other working people, we want to live in a city that provides the services we need to be able to live here. The proposed agreements, though representing some progress relative to the ones they replace, are insufficient to the city's need for revenue to provide those services. Our public school buildings, by one estimate I've seen recently, are in need of hundreds of millions of dollars in repairs. When we take into account that Brown is an endowment valued at $6.5 billion most recently, as well as, according to a recent forensic accountant's report, something like $1 billion in unallocated funds on hand, The $8.8 million a year they would pay under these agreements represents a significant mismatch between what Brown can afford and the fiscal needs of Providence. I'm also disturbed by a provision of the Memorandum of Understanding that would freeze political speech and fiscal policy toward wealthy nonprofits for the next 20 years. The lifetime of this agreement will see at least 2 more mayoral administrations and 5 iterations of city council. If succeeding city governments think it is in the best interests of Providence to alter financial arrangements with our wealthy nonprofits, they should be allowed to explore those options without fear of a sudden cessation of payments. Apart from the principle of the matter, this deal simply is not generous enough for us to rule out such future policy avenues. Having taken part in 3 different negotiations with the administration of Brown, I become used to hearing claims they don't have the kind of money that their public financial statements would suggest. They use this as a pretext for offering us wage increases below what we tell them is required for us to be able to live in Providence. Nonetheless, by the end of negotiations, they always seem to have found money for a larger raise squirreled away somewhere. I fear that in negotiating this agreement for the city, the mayor has not waited for President Paxton to take a look in her sock drawer and find an extra few million per year. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, Mike DiBiase. Mike, if you could state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Michael DBA's 200 Exchange Street, Providence, Rhode Island. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you on this important issue. I'm here as the President and CEO of the Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan public policy research organization. Among the things that we focus on is municipal finance. I'm also a member of the recently established Taxation and Revenue Study Commission that the council recently established by ordinance. I'm here in support of the resolution, and I'll just make 3 brief points. First, I don't need to tell members here that the city's finances are challenging, and while the annual revenue from these pilot agreements are not overly large in relation to the city's budget, they are not insubstantial, and they will matter with respect to the ability to fund necessary public services. So I think it's an important amount of money for a city that struggles to find revenue. Second, the 20-year term of this agreement provides the city with reliable and predictable funding, and I think that's important as well, that the city can base its budgets on it and make plans over multiple years. And lastly, and not to be lost, this arrangement agreement removes a natural point of conflict to the extent that it's approved between the city and the nonprofit institutions of higher education, and that's not a small thing. It allows the city then to partner and work with these institutions on a range of issues to improve the city and to help the institution succeed, and removes a point of controversy in that relationship. So for those reasons, I would ask that the council support. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, Sharina Razik. Sharina, if you could state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Sharina Razik, 96 Camp Street. I'm the president of the Graduate Labor Organization at Brown, representing 1,000 graduate workers who fulfill the teaching and research mission of the university, and I am here today in my capacity as GLOW president to testify against the pilot memorandum. Under this agreement, Brown will be paying just over $8 million annually. If taxed at the commercial rate, Brown would be expected to pay $53 million to meet its fair share owed to this city as a property owner. Brown is the largest landlord in the city, so I question, why should it not be taxed like one? These agreements would allow Brown to hoard $932 million in tax money owed to the city of Providence over the next 20 years. If we count this with the last 20 years of the previous insufficient pilot program, that is $1.7 billion. That is money withheld from vital social services, and critically, from my perspective as an educator, money withheld from the educational system in Providence in dire conditions. Brown is an institution with a $6.5 billion endowment, whose president has a $1.77 million salary this year. That's a lot of profit for a nonprofit, you might say. I am here today in my vicinity as a representative of grad workers at Brown and in solidarity with the working people of Providence to tell you that Brown is also an institution whose word cannot be trusted. The pilot agreement as it stands are clearly stated as voluntary payments. This means that each year colleges and universities can decide whether to make the payments they agreed to in this agreement or not. If the colleges and universities fail to fulfill their commitments, there is no legal recourse available for the next 2 decades to enforce their payment obligations. And I cannot emphasize enough how much energy GLOW has put into holding Brown accountable through legal and other modes of recourse. We are currently in negotiations with Brown over the conditions of our labor for the next 3 years. And in the midst of these negotiations, Brown instituted a system of unequal tiered pay totally against our interests and against our will, breaking precedents and promises. We have tried every year we have been in existence as a union to get Brown to commit in writing to keeping good on their word about equal pay for all grads. And now we are fighting and campaigning to win it back, as our grad workers' livelihoods and our students' learning conditions depend on it. Let me say again from experience and with emphasis that Brown's word should not be trusted. You need their commitments in legally binding writing. These universities are operating like corporations. They are accumulating property like commercial real estate businesses. They are treating students like customers and grad workers like replaceable apprentices. I say if Brown wants to act like a corporation, it should be taxed like one. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next we have Wooly Ackenby, Wooly T. Ackenby, Woolen I. Ackenby. I'm probably saying the name wrong, I apologize.
Wooly Ackenby.
Thank you.
Chair.
Sorry about
do I have to? All right, cool. All right, so good evening, everybody. My name is Wooly Ackenby. I am a Smith Hill resident. I have lived in Smith Hill since I was 10 years old. And I just want to say that I'm proud of all the students that are up here fighting and sharing their thoughts. Proud of all y'all. I wish I had a crew of young people invested like you all when I was a young person. With that said, I'm here at a different capacity, coming from the lens of somebody who grew up in Smith Hill, like I said, for 24 years. And I happen to be the recipient of a lot of positive experiences with Providence College and some of the students and alumni that went to that college. One of the main programs that I was a recipient of that pretty much kept me focused and grounded and supported me from a young person was the Youth Resident Assistance Program, which was co-founded by the Providence College and also the now defunct Smith Hill CDC, and provided homework help and tutoring for young people after school, took us on different field trips, provided different opportunities, even employment opportunities once we became of age in high school, put some money in kids' pockets back when the minimum wage was $6.25, and they also They donate and invest money to help assist with programs like our annual Smithville Turkey Drive, which is right around the corner. In our heyday pre-COVID, pre-lockdown, we fed upwards of 600 families with turkeys and canned goods. Now we do gift cards to make sure that the most vulnerable folks in our neighborhood have a meal for the holidays. They also support and donate money to help run our Smithville Block Party, which we do every year. And they also host, pay the rent on one of the few free community spaces in Providence, to my knowledge. I've been on the ground, boots on the ground for a very long time as a young person, super vocal, and having the Smithville, the Providence College Smithville Annex on Douglas Avenue for members of the community like myself, Councilwoman Graves, and some of the other folks that live in the North End communities to have a free space to, whether it's just a fellowship, whether it's to bring in other students from Providence College off of campus so they can actually meet and talk and learn about the history of Smith Hill with residents, has been super empowering on both sides. And I feel like more of that needs to happen, and the only way that we can do that is by collaboration. And I don't want to get into the weeds of like the whole pilot MOU, because we don't need to do that. I have relationships with members of that college community that I leverage for the benefit of the people that live in my neighborhood who don't have the energy or the time to speak up for themselves. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you for your time, and everyone have a good evening.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, Vivian Sutherland. Vivian, if you could state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Vivian Sutherland. I live at 26 Bainbridge Avenue in the west side of Providence. I figured I would just talk about my experience with these pilot institutions. I have grown up in Rhode Island all my life, moved to Providence in 2007 as a URI student. When I was a child, I actually went to the RISD Museum for like art classes, like when I was in kindergarten. It was a lovely experience. Got to see like, I don't know, the Buddha statue. It was awesome. But also I gotta say, like, eventually when I graduated in the 2008 recession, wasn't really able to find a job, had to work at the Portfolio Cafe at RISD. Dated someone from RISD, really got to see a lot of the institution, got to work at the Brown Bookstore for the cafe that was in there. I don't know. In my life, I've gotten to experience a lot of the wealth that Brown has, that RISD has, and to really see the types of people that are able to go to that institution, have their families donate to that institution, to all these institutions, really. And I don't know. I just I can't shake the fact that I know from personal experience that the wealth is there to contribute more to the city. I know that from having to work in those places that oftentimes we had to we couldn't afford to live on the east side. When I tried to live on the east side, I had to move back to the west side. It was just too expensive. And, honestly, most of my experience as a Providence resident has been living in Federal Hill, an area that used to be pretty much the slums. Most of the housing that, even if it has been renovated, is still really terrible. I know a lot of the councilors here had to probably hear from the city council president last week when introducing the rental registry idea, that she hears from tenants that are having snow come into their windows, weatherization issues all the time. A lot of our housing stock and a lot of our tenants and workers in this city are working for these institutions or around institutions that help support these institutions, and we don't really see the benefits of actually being able to live in this city. There's a lot of great art, there's a lot of great things that happen. I've always loved it, but it's a dirty, trashy city. It's a dirty, trashy city to live in as a worker, as a renter, that has a lot of cool art shit. And I don't know, I just think we really need to listen to the people here tonight instead of the suits who were talking earlier. And all power to the people.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Cliff Wood. Welcome, Cliff. State your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. I am here today in my suit from eBay to support this pilot agreement. Specifically, I like the other folks, I won't go into the details. You know them well, better than I do, and this seems to be quite a generous agreement relative to past and relative to other agreements across country. I wanted to talk specifically about my experience with the universities and the downtown, which you all know very well is important to the economic and social and cultural health of the city and by extension the state. You know, I've had the opportunity for many years in different guises. Currently I'm the executive director of the Providence Foundation. A lot of opportunities to work with the universities in the downtown, specifically Brown and RISD and Johnson and Wales. In recent years during this role, all of these universities to various degrees, some very significant degrees as well, have combined efforts and programmatically and financially supported our endeavors to improve our public and to improve the conditions and program in our public spaces, to help address some of the public health and safety issues that have come really in a large way in the last several years, but even before that, they've been, again, financially as well as programmatically very supportive of these efforts in the downtown and the individuals that are involved in these situations, as well as working on issues of climate resilience and on our ability to absorb that in the downtown, but as well as across the entire city. Again, they have been incredibly supportive. But what this does, this pilot agreement, as you know, I've been in the city a while, many of you have as well. These have been contentious issues, you know. With this agreement, this will give us an opportunity to sort of move past those fights, something that we can be proud of, identifying predictable resources, identify predictable ways, most importantly, for us to partner going forward over the next 20 years, which go by a lot faster than one might think. And I do see this as an opportunity for us to create a model for ourselves and for others. And I think that we can do this as a city, and I think that this is very encouraging. Again, I've had a lot of opportunity to work in the city, and this is one of the things that I've seen that makes me feel like these universities are definitely very publicly making us aware of their importance here, and that they are important to us, but that we're just as important to them. And so I really encourage you to support this. I certainly know that I do. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next is Isaac Slevin. Isaac Slevin. Isaac, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, all. My name is Isaac Slevin. I live at 259 Brook Street. So, my name is Isaac. I'm the hub coordinator of Sunrise Brown. We have brought us, Students for Educational Equity and the Brown Activist Coalition, have brought 55 Brown University student undergrads here in addition to the efforts of the Grad Labor Org. Can y'all stand up? Yeah. So we're here because our university has a responsibility to treat this city with respect. I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, where Northwestern University towered over the town. And so I know what it's like to be on the town side of broken town-gown relations, where an institution with the most wealth, the highest visibility, and the most expensive land in the city gobbles up resources and drops pennies behind it in the name of philanthropy and charity. And so now I'm at Brown, and I've watched the university reject an emergency $2 million infusion into Providence public schools. I've watched the university snap up properties in the jewelry district, taking them out of the tax base, and then asking the city and Brown students to thank it when it says that $8 million a year against $50 million owed in property taxes is enough. I've watched rents rise in Fox Point, and the university brag about this agreement that pays the city at best of 1/5 of what it owes. So I don't want to hear anything about how Providence should take what it can get, because Brown just finished a $2 billion fundraising campaign. And we're saying that this is enough. That's crap, and we can't take that. But it even gets worse, because this agreement would tie Brown's hands for 20 years, taking your ability as council members, as legislators, as legislators to govern the city and its institutions away from you. Half of us who are here from Brown weren't even alive 20 years ago, and you're handcuffing yourselves until none of you will be in office. And we'll have an entire next generation of students, of city leaders, of residents. So ultimately what this comes down to is public relations pennies. You're handcuffing the democratic process. You're asking the city to be thankful. Why are we hearing about Brown being good neighbors to the city of Providence? Let's ask ourselves why these schools are so underfunded in the first place, why these hospitals have maternity wards that are struggling. And then you have a city with a $6.5 billion endowment begging the city to thank it for $8 million a year. It's disgraceful. There are more strings attached in this deal than a puppet playing the harp. And so we gotta say no, and y'all gotta say no. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Greg Mancini. Welcome, Greg. If you could state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Greg Mancini. I have a business at 134 Thurbers Avenue in Providence. I'm the head of a nonprofit called Build Rhode Island. We have a board that's comprised of 4 different contractor associations and 17 different construction trade unions. I'm also the chairman of another nonprofit called Building Futures. I want to start out by applauding all the students that came here for participating in our democracy. They care enough about our community to come here and make their voice heard. Having said that, I respectfully disagree with them, and I just want to point out that this particular agreement has significant economic benefits to our community that is not in the paper before you. For example, all 4 universities get involved. They have a huge and robust capital improvement program that has employed hundreds of Rhode Islanders and hundreds of Providence residents. Brown in particular has made a commitment to employ 15% of the workers on their projects from Building Futures, which is basically an inner-city program devoted to training inner-city young disadvantaged adults and putting the work and actually developing a career in construction. Brown is also committed to building all union projects for any project over $25 million. So as much as you have an agreement before you, there's so much more that these universities do for our community. And they regularly employing hundreds of trades workers, hundreds of local trade workers, hundreds of union trade workers, creating business opportunities for local contractors, many of whom are in the city of Providence. And I believe that creates great value over and beyond the contribution that the universities have pledged to commit. I ask you to keep that going, allowing the universities to continue to employ local trade union workers and create business opportunities for local contractors by approving this agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next is Garrett Brand. Welcome, Garrett. If you could state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Garrett Brand, and I live at a dorm at Brown University. My name is Garrett Brand. Like I just said, I'm a sophomore at Brown, so I'm speaking in my capacity as a student, specifically about my institution. But before I get started, I want to address some things I've heard from people who have spoken in support of the MOU thus far. Even if Brown did something good, like donate money to a hospital, to an underfunded hospital, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't pay their taxes, right? And let's take a second to think a little deeper. As a quick Google search turns out, the reason Brown might be interested in funding this hospital is because it's the primary teaching hospital of their med school, right? There's a clear incentive here. Why was the hospital underfunded in the first place is the critical question here, right? Maybe because the city doesn't collect enough tax revenue because of Brown primarily. Let's just think a little deeper. Now, with that out of the way, I'm here on behalf of the Brown Activist Coalition to urge you to vote no on this MOU concerning the pilot payments to the city. I'm here to express my commitment to holding Brown accountable to Providence, and I don't think this deal does that in any conceivable way. Brown has tried to frame this MOU as an act of great generosity on their part, when in reality, they're using their economic leverage to try and subvert democracy to get their way, okay? Brown knows that they enter these negotiations from a position of power. After all, they've got all the money, and they want to make sure that that money can sit up on the hill and do whatever exactly an endowment actually does. Specifically, they snuck that nasty little clause in the MOU saying how the city, quote, "The city shall agree to refrain from incremental requests for additional voluntary payments." Come on. Don't let them do this to you. Don't let them bully their way into taking away your ability to provide for your constituents. Remember, when you can't get enough money from Brown, whose property taxes go up to fill in the hole that's left? Why should Brown be able to tell you how to run your city and run up the bill on your constituents' property taxes? They just want another 20 years of safety from a tax on that pretty little $6.5 billion endowment. Don't let them have it. It's one thing for Brown to ignore its financial responsibility to the city. It's a whole other thing entirely for them to flip that responsibility into a tactic to suppress the local democratic process. I want to remind everybody that this deal would last 20 years, and as I'm sure we're all aware, as we just heard, the maximum term for city council members is 12 years, meaning that by accepting this deal, you'd be damning the future city leaders who will one day sit in these chairs to a world where they can't do what they have to take care of the people of this city. If Brown was truly coming into these negotiations in good faith with real intention to give back to the city, why would they mandate provisions like this? They are clearly acting in bad faith and thus must be held accountable for doing so with a no vote. On top of the limits on the democratic process, this agreement gives Brown more tax-exempt land in the Jewelry District and on the Hill, restricts the city council's ability to have input on how Brown uses its land in terms of zoning, and does not account for the very real future where Brown, as history has proved, will use its outsized power to gobble up more and more land that will thus take more and more money away from the city's tax revenue. Now, before I stop talking, I just want to put something into perspective that we heard a little before. Between the past 20 years of pilots and the next 20 years out of this proposed deal, Providence will have lost $1.7 billion in property tax revenue from Brown alone. Think about that, $1.7 billion. What could that mean for a city, right? For comparison, Brown's endowment is $6.5 billion. Those are the stakes that we're dealing with here. With that said, for all of these reasons, I think it is imperative that you vote no on this legislation and fight for a better deal for this city and its people. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next we have, next is, I can't read the first name. It begins with an L. Last name is White, I know that. Last name is White. What's it look like? No address here to, okay. Lori White. If you could state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Lori White, and I'm the president of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, 30 Exchange Terrace, Providence, right across the street. Commercial office building. We pay full taxes on our property. I'm here this evening to speak in support of the Memorandum of Understanding for the nonprofit institutions and the pilot program as discussed tonight. Total combined payments under the new agreements are $223 million, as you all know, which is more than double the $94 million in payments under previous agreements. In addition to these payments, the institutions will also make valued investments in our neighborhoods and our communities to the extent of $162 million. Included in these contributions are such items as trash and snow removal, maintenance and repair of public walkways, college scholarships for residents, in support of the Providence K-12 public school system, among other critical initiatives. With the additional payments to the city from these agreements, Providence will be able to lift the current hiring freeze, continue to provide high-quality city services, and launch new initiatives across the city. This is one of the strongest pilot agreements in the country, and it provides Providence with predictable, long-term financial support. And also, I would say that it aligns beautifully with the priorities of both the city, the small business community, the business community, and the future economic development of our city, which is so dearly reliant on our anchor institutions that provide such economic development expansion here. We are grateful for the contributions of our nonprofit institutions and urge you to look favorably upon this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Emery Brinson. Welcome, Emery. If you could state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Emery Brinson, and I live at 39 East George Street. I'm here as my capacity as a Brown student. So Brown likes to talk about being a good neighbor, but it's not neighborly to hold the city you live in hostage with the promise of minimal funding that you can choose to withhold. It's not neighborly to pretend that $8 million and $53 million are the same. It's not neighborly to ignore the calls of the community partners in favor of getting as many parking spots and as much non-taxable land as you can out of the city you claim to coexist with. Instead of simply paying the city what it owes, like every other responsible citizen, it has held bad faith negotiations going so far as to try to limit what the city government can do in the future, all under the guise of being neighborly. Here are some words you can use instead: cheap, undemocratic, and exploitive. The fine print of the current agreement is all about how Brown can make these voluntary payments work for them. It's not enough. City of Providence deserves to have autonomy over its finances. I'm here with and on behalf of many Brown students who stand with the Providence community in holding Brown and institutions like it accountable, and I urge the committee to amend this agreement and correct the current issues. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Tom Johnston. Welcome, Tom. If you could state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Tom Johnston, President of the Providence Police and Fire Retired Association, 92 Printery Street, Providence, Rhode Island. I represent close to 2,000 members, and these men and women have done honorable service with the City of Providence, and they've been promised certain benefits. And unfortunately, because of the financial situation in the city, they're not really receiving what they should get. Now, not too long ago, let's say over 10 years ago, we were in a similar situation where we were going to save money for the City of Providence and take care of the police and fire pension system. Wonderful. 10 years went by. The members, the retired police and fire, went without certain benefits, and lo and behold, instead of the pension being increased, it's now funded at 25%. It's unbelievable. Something needs to be done immediately. And to be honest with you, I'm glad there's dialogue now on the taxation of the nonprofits. It's only fair that 40% of the property in Providence, over 40% of the property in Providence is off the tax rolls. I mean, it's just silly in itself. I mean, if you elect not to tax any buildings where education is taught exclusively, I understand that. But all this other stuff is totally absurd. The other 60% or 50% of the people in Providence have to pay it. And they have to go without adequate fire, police, and they go without taking care of the people that have taken care of them for years and the promises that have been made. I really think it's so important now for this committee, for this council, to start looking into a fair taxation of these nonprofits. And I'm telling you, I don't think they should be taxed a penny more or a penny less than anybody else that lives in the city of Providence is taxed. That's it. I don't care what they do. It's just not fair. And I believe the mayor, I'm glad he brought this up, and I'm glad you're talking about it. 10 years ago, I spoke before the Finance Committee at the State House on this issue. All right? Because it's a state issue. And we got nowhere. So once again, thank you for your time. Please consider doing something to make sure that they pay their fair share. So the little guy doesn't have to pay their share. And the men and women that do honorable service to the citizens of this city don't have to go without what they've earned. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you for your testimony.
Can I add one more thing? That 20-year deal is ridiculous.
Okay, next is Aniza Sandhai. Probably saying that wrong, I apologize. Welcome, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name's Anissa Sandhi. I live at Brown University on 102 George Street. I'm a student at Brown, and I'm against this plan. Although the plan does increase voluntary payments, the universities are each remaining exempt from tens of millions of dollars in taxes, and the rest of Providence community is suffering without that investment. The combined annual tax dollars for the city that they would get from all of these universities here would be $95 million, and the proposed plan asks for under $9 million. The plan does not take enough from these schools who occupy so much of the city and have easily enough money to contribute more to Providence. Brown alone gains hundreds of millions of dollars every year just on the investment from their endowment, and they can afford to invest more in Providence. It worries me greatly that this plan would not allow for a reevaluation for multiple decades. These universities have already been paying a tiny percentage of what they should owe, and letting this continue will allow continued harm to the Providence community by these institutions. The tax burden is falling on local residents and local businesses, and if we reject this plan and create one that will actually hold these institutions accountable to make higher payments to the city, we can finally begin to minimize that harm. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next is Rob Stoltzman. Rob Stoltzman, is he here? Rob Stoltzman, are you here? Going once, going twice? Rob Stoltzman? I guess he left. Next is Meg Henning. Welcome, Meg. Please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Meg. I'm at 69 Brown Street. Hello, everyone. I am a current junior at Brown, and I'm also the co-president of Students for Educational Equity. As a student at Brown, I have had the privilege of being able to experience all of the amazing things the city of Providence has to offer. I study education and have also had the amazing opportunity to directly learn from the schools and education through working with and learning from PPSD. I've had the ability to learn from community organizations and organizers here in Providence as well. Therefore, I know with full confidence that my education has been enriched by the fact that Brown is placed in the very special city of Providence. I value my education so highly because of its placement in this city and the unique opportunities I've had because of it. It is thus both harmful and hurtful to know that my university does not do the same. Brown is a multi-billion-dollar institution that has only benefited from its place in Providence. With a long and horrific history of taking advantage of its power and location, it is imperative that Brown not take further advantage of the city of Providence. Brown has capitalized on the city by expanding its land and ripping through communities of families and businesses for years. Brown's pilot gift to the city, which is less than 20% of what it should actually be paying for land taxes, is just a scratch at the surface of what this institution truly owes to the city of Providence and its people. In the next 20 years, as many other people have said, many Brown students, administrators, and professors will come and go to the city of Providence every 4 or 8 years. It is thus crucial that the residents of the city and their elected representatives who actually live in Providence and the communities have full ability to advocate for taxation, revenue, and support from the institution without restrictions from this agreement. Allowing this MOU to pass will allow Brown further power and capitalization over the city, which it does not deserve. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Also, if anybody has not signed up, if you came in late, please sign up to speak. And we're going to go to Rachel Thomas. Welcome, Rachel. Please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Rachel, and I live at 69 Brown Street. I'm here today to ask that you oppose the memorandum of understanding that is being presented to you. As a student at Brown, I've seen how Brown hoards its wealth and rarely keeps its promises to the Providence community. In October 2021, Brown announced its College Access Initiative program that is proposed to develop and fund a college preparation program for PPSD students through collaboration with community partners. It was set to be planned in May 2022, and currently there is not even an outline for the program, and several community members have not even heard of the proposed initiative. This is just one recent example of how Brown has not kept its promise to the city of Providence and has gotten away with not paying what it owes because of its wealth, nonprofit status, and educational mission. This has been seen time and time again, and Brown must be held accountable. This MOU perpetuates this and allows Brown to take advantage of the Providence community again. The memorandum prevents the City Council from legislating on certain university-related issues for 20 years. Legislation that could enable the city to tax Brown's $6.5 billion endowment. I believe that my university must be held accountable to the city of Providence. As such, I ask that you oppose the MOU that allows Brown to take advantage of the Providence community. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, if we could have Lorenzo Mahoney. Welcome. Please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Lorenzo Mahoney. I reside at 69 Brown Street. I come to you today as a senior at Brown. I study public policy, and I'm involved in student activism with Students for Educational Equity and the wider Brown Activist Coalition. And I urge you strongly not to vote this Memorandum of Understanding through, despite the progress the universities in the city have claimed to have made by increasing discrete payments to the city over the next 20 years. I would like to say that my mom taught me well to know that the devil is in the details, and that this agreement is actually a regression from previous agreements in multiple ways. Comparing it to the 2003 Memorandum of Understanding, this 2023 revised version actually gets rid of transitional payments on lots or properties that the universities acquire. Instead of slowly paying off the actual property value before it eventually gets phased out, this agreement gets rid of that practice and basically surmises that when universities acquire additional property, like Brown has acquired 21 individual properties within the last 5 years alone, they immediately fall off of the tax base and lose all property taxation value. Beyond rolling back these previous measures, this agreement also fails to institute proper consequences on the universities not fulfilling their obligations. Take for instance the community contributions. While these are not direct payments, the universities are agreeing to pay a certain amount through indirect contributions to the city, whether this be snow removal, trash removal, or public services offered to public citizens. However, there is literally no consequences if they fail to fall short of these proposed numbers that they are stating that they are explicitly paying when they're touting these new amazing progressive pilots. I would advocate that you make sure that any money that falls short of the scheduled payments immediately gets tacked on to the next fiscal year's direct payments to ensure that the university pays the money that they say they are going to pay. Additionally, I would also advocate that this 20-year deal should not strip City Council of its power to ask for additional money. I would say that some of the proponents of this memorandum have cited its predictability as something to be certain of and as a benefit of it. But I would say the thing it predicts is that for the next 20 years, these universities will not be paying their fair share. Additionally, if both these memorandums, the Memorandum of Understanding and the Memorandum of Agreement, go through, in 10 years, Brown will start to pay $4 million less than it had for the previous 10 years. Where's that $4 million going to come from in city funding? Other people, I guess. Additionally, people have claimed that this removes a point of conflict in removing and hamstringing the city council's ability to actually ask for more money. I would say that the point of conflict is not that the city and the universities are engaging in that they fail to engage because that the city has this looming threat of asking for more money. I would say that the point of conflict originating between the city and the university is that the universities continuously hoard this wealth without being the good neighbors that they claim to be. Because of all these reasons, I strongly urge you not to vote this Memorandum of Understanding through, and strongly urge you to renegotiate between the mayor's office and these institutions to demand that they pay their fair share. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, Annabelle Williams. Welcome. State your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Annabelle Williams, and I'm a student at Brown University. My address is 69 Brown Street. I strongly encourage the Finance Committee not to pass the MOU it is considering today because it could be stronger. As a student at Brown, I feel it is my responsibility to hold my university accountable to reduce the harm it causes to Providence and maximize its contributions to the city. I am not satisfied with the current Memorandum of Understanding and Memorandum of Agreement. And while I understand that the MOU is the only document open for discussion today, I also want to raise concerns about the MOA, which grants an additional 5 Providence street blocks to Brown, taking it out of the tax base, and I encourage the City of Providence to have an opportunity for public comment for the MOA. So Brown certainly can and should pay more. But today, there are 2 specific parts of the MOU that I am asking the city to retract. First, it limits the city council from in any way challenging private universities' tax-exempt statuses for 20 years. Secondly, it prohibits the city from asking for future financial contributions of any type. Brown has a $6.5 billion endowment that has grown considerably since the start of the pandemic. Legislation enabling the city to tax Brown's large endowment would provide a strong foundation for the city's tax base that is currently missing, which could go towards funding the currently severely underfunded public education system. The MOU would make this no longer an option until 2043. If the Finance Committee values the basic principles of democracy, it should reconsider passing an MOU that prohibits future representatives from even considering a specific piece of legislation. Additionally, Brown says on its website, at the heart of the relationship between the university and the people and organizations in the city and state is a commitment to productive engagement and partnership. How can the city foster a productive and engaging partnership over the next 20 years if it is unable to request from Brown additional financial contributions, including for the, quote, sponsorship of city events, streetscape improvements, public space improvements, and similar requests, unquote? Don't pass the MOU as it stands right now. I ask you to renegotiate it with the city's next 2 decades in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. City Sergeant, if you could bring up those other sheets, please. Next is going to be Caitlin Carpenter. State your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Carpenter. I'm a sophomore at Brown. My address is 259 Brook Street, although mailing address is 69 Brown Street. Like so many before, I am testifying today against the proposed agreement. And again, as so many students before me have already said tonight, this agreement is simply not enough. I'm going to reiterate some numbers to you. I know you've got a lot of numbers thrown at you at the moment, but just to let these sink in. It is absolutely ridiculous that the institution that is sitting atop and is now increasingly around College Hill pays less than 1/5 what it would otherwise pay in property taxes each year under this agreement. This is especially true considering that Brown nets about $325 million annually from interest on its endowment alone, so that's not including tuition or donations. Under this agreement, Brown would give a total of around or over $174 million to Providence over the next 20 years. That is not even half of what Brown earns annually on interest, again reiterating that $325 million. And that is compared to the grand, sweeping $6.5 billion endowment that Brown also enjoys. It's a drop in the bucket, frankly. Previous speakers in favor of this agreement, or supposedly, there's been some mixed testimony, have emphasized the real material difference that an increase in payments from institutions like Brown have made and will continue to make in your constituents' lives. So what's decided now matters. And it'll matter for 2 decades. That's 20 years. As a previous student has said, that is longer than I've been alive. That's longer than most of these people's lives. That's insane. So as a student from the university that's again sitting atop that hill over there, I am urging you not to pass this agreement and to negotiate more from Brown, because they have a lot more to give. And actually, scratch that. They have a lot more that they owe. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, next is Charlotte Calkins. Welcome, Charlotte. State your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Charlotte Calkins, and I'm living at 211 Bowen Street. And I want to once again highlight the issue of accountability in this agreement. So setting aside for a second the fact that Brown is proposing to pay fractions of what it actually owes, the agreement has virtually no measures of ensuring universities pay their so-called community contributions, and it closes doors for further taxation or collection of funds from Brown and these other institutions for the next 20 years. Brown is spinning a tale about the fairness and the rectitude of their payments. And we've heard from today's testimony, there are plenty of anecdotes of Brown funding successful public projects. But for every pretty public project, there's gentrification, there's small businesses going out of business, and there's struggling public schools, as we've also heard today. And so I have to ask, why should Brown get to choose where this money goes? How can Brown be committed to a community while simultaneously taking away that community's ability to use the democratic process to direct the funds where the community agrees is best? How can it be committed to a community without being held to the processes of accountability that keep businesses and individuals here from committing tax evasion? It's time for Brown to give up its power and to overstep the city's processes, and not just give pennies on the dollar to keep itself safely enshrined on its hill for the next 20 years. The city should vote no until this agreement, at minimum, stops treating the private institutions like special snowflakes. And the students here today that you've heard from, and a ton more who could not make it, are going to keep pushing Brown to do better. So please don't rush into this. Providence deserves better. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Isabella Giaro. Probably saying that name wrong, but if you could state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Isabella Garo. I live at Young Orchard 4, and I'm an undergraduate student at Brown University, as well as the community co-lead for Sunrise Brown. As a Brown University student, I hear a pretty consistent narrative about how much the university gives to the local community and how the local community is sustained by their existence on College Hill. But as an activist interacting with the local community, I hear a very different narrative, a narrative about land grabbing, gentrification. It breaks up communities, it raises costs of living for the local community members. And a lot of them feel that Brown University is quite simply a leech on their community. And as they continue to expand and expand into the local community, they're not being taxed on the land that they're taking, which is absolutely insane. The least we could do as such a wealthy institution that continues to grab more and more land in Providence is to pay our fair share. And trust me, I know that they are capable of paying it. As someone who does not come from wealth, but rather from your run-of-the-mill military family, I am baffled by the amount of wealth I see on College Hill. It is absolutely dripping in money. And yet the university tries to tell the city that it can't afford or won't pay its taxes. That is absolutely ridiculous. And that is not even the worst part. They're trying to tell the city council how they should legislate these universities. They ask you to not demand any more payments over the next 20 years. That is ludicrous. It is a subversion of democracy. It feels, I can imagine at least, to the people of Providence, like the university is telling them to take their crumbs and shut up. What a horrible insult to the community that continues to breathe life into Brown's campus. I cannot, in good conscience, as a university student living on this untaxed land, do nothing. I know that the city council would be sticking its neck out by refusing to approve this memorandum. I understand it would take yet another months-long process to renegotiate a better deal, but I do think it is worth it. The people of Providence deserve their public resources, and Brown University deserves to be humbled. So please, on behalf of your constituents, humble them and vote no on this memorandum. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Mike Gazapaliki. I'm saying that wrong probably, but Mike? Okay. Mike, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, councilors. My name is Mike Saplicki. I live at 427 Morris Ave in Ward 3 on the east side. On the MOU, I don't have much to say beyond this. I wish it were more, and it should be more. When you read that document and the associated MOA, it's incredibly clear how much the universities are terrified of losing their tax exemption, to the point that they're trying to purchase your powers to pursue this end. This MOU seriously undervalues that terror. I think you should take that to heart. On to the MOA. There are 3 issues in this transactional document. It's not transparent, and it hinders democratic decision-making. It is underpriced, and it has political, ideological provisions and makes policy in their service. This is not appropriate. Negotiators should not be playing both administrators and legislators. So, to these 3 points. To the city of Providence, show your work. How are we to value these provisions? How do we know if it's a good or a fair deal? Consolidate and update the documents. For instance, if I want to understand the parking deal that's embedded in the MOA, I need to track down at least 3 different documents. Right? I got to go to 2012, I got to go to proposed 2023, I have to go to the master parking lease, right, to try to put these pieces together. Consolidate that. Now this matters practically, right? In 2014, Mayor Smiley took his first crack at office. He pledged to accomplish his goals, quote, with transparency and integrity. Last year, his successful campaign centered on making people, quote, feel like government is working for them. I think it's clear he understands these concepts are connected. If people are to feel like government is working for them, they need to see how government arrives at its decisions. When they don't see this, they lose trust. You can't buy trust. Think of it as earning compound interest, right, on the underlying principle of open, clear, democratic process. And we're seeing this dynamic in action right now, right, in the discussion around Mount Pleasant High School. To me, that should be a no-brainer decision. But we have people who understandably oppose it because of the past experiences they've had in this lack of trust, right? We gotta build trust. We need a better process. I'm a dad, right? Stay-at-home dad, watch my kids, trying to fight this losing battle with potty training, right? Get through this domestic grind each day. So why do I need to spend several hours trying to reverse engineer this deal and understand what's valued for which thing and is it fair, right? That's ridiculous. A transparent document would break down the provisions into the respective valuations. They'll provide methods of arriving at those valuations, and if the city cannot do that, where did this deal come from? Who thought up these numbers? In the absence of any breakouts of valuation, we're left to compare the deals in total. Doing this reveals a second problem. Total inadequacy of the price we're charging Brown, given inflation, and what Brown is asking for. And this handout I gave you, I broke this down for you, and you can see the 2 comparisons there. Okay, in short, the 2023 deal will bring in an extra $5.5 million over the 2012, if we put that in real, constant 2012 dollars. In reality, that's the best case assumption. I can't see the future. I don't know what inflation's gonna do. That value will actually be lower, probably more like $2 million, $3 million. You cannot allow yourself to be wowed with a higher nominal price tag 10 years later. Brown is getting substantially more value with a proposed MOA over 2012, and it should pay more for that value. Last issue, it's more abstract, and that this is not just a transactional document, but it's a political and ideological one. In the service of its worldview, it enacts policies that should be considered separately through a process that involves the council and the public at the outset, instead of after the fact with a take it or leave it dare. This worldview is visible, right, in the language of shared interest, collaboration, joint incentives, yada, 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 right? And it's most visible in the system of the tax credits. So I know I'm getting near my limit here, but I don't have too much longer. I was editing on the fly.
You got about
right?
30 seconds left.
Okay. So we've ceded responsibility to identify city interests in a particularized way. It looks a lot like a tax increment financing district, but it's a special one that's coterminous with the entire city, and it follows Brown wherever it chooses to go. It assumes in advance whatever development Brown is involved with is worthy of a tax subsidy. This is wrong-headed. Brown already has incentives independent of the city to undertake activity. It shouldn't be giving a subsidy for doing what it's already going to do. Brown already has been given the mother of all subsidies through a tax exemption, and it misaligns the city and Brown's interest. One of the city's highest interests is revenue growth. Bestowing this personal floating TIF curbs the rate of revenue growth from Brown, and in addition to the MOU's limits. This system is complicated and involves great stakes. It should not be created administratively and then sold to a private interest unpriced through the vehicle of an MOA. It should be handled separately, like this rental registry, through regular order and the regular legislative process of the council. The city is ceding too much authority over too much term. You do have a veto. You do have power of the purse. This actually gives you plenty of leverage. I've just given you a handout that has some recommendations. I urge the council to consider them. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, Grant Dolgarian. All right, so we'll get the next person, Lauren Griffiths. Lauren, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Lauren Griffiths, and I live at 66 John Street. I'm here today as someone who is both born and raised in Rhode Island and as a student of Brown University and a member of the Activist Coalition. With my time, I would like to largely call attention to the repercussions that this agreement will reiterate would have on the students of Providence. As I said, I'm from Rhode Island, and from the 2019 to 2020 school year, I represented the students of the state on the Rhode Island Board of Education and the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education. If you're thinking through this year, you're correct. This was the year of RIDE's takeover of PPSD. I had to fight tooth and nail for the students of our state and of Providence in the face of major institutions who I learned care about nobody but themselves. I saw and experienced firsthand the unacceptable conditions of the education system in this city, and the intrinsic role that Brown University and other institutions had in this as a result of their hoarding of wealth, which has deprived the city and the schools of the funding necessary to give students the education that they deserve. This MOU will continue this deprivation, and for what? People in support kept bringing up the positive impacts that these institutions have on the city, but there's no reason to believe that a larger monetary commitment will take away these positive impacts. Less funds to Providence will not decrease students' desire to engage with the city. It won't decrease the research going on campuses or the jobs available, and it won't decrease the collaboration between Providence and Brown University and other institutions. This agreement will simply enable institutions like Brown's further exploitation of Providence land and Providence residents. And this exploitation will be guaranteed for at least 20 years, which is a long time, as everyone has been saying. I was only a few months old. Most of us weren't born. And for terms you may understand, Tom Brady was only starting his second season as the Patriots' starting quarterback. And as people have said, this is a whole generation of students who you will be forcing into this cycle of an education that they do not deserve. I beg you to not put these institutions, their endowments, and their students, most of whom aren't from here, and who will not be staying here after they graduate, over your own students. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Grant? Grant, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
As you know, my right leg is not a happy leg at the moment. I apologize. Grant Bulgarian, 20 Exeter Street in Providence. I like the MOA because it's specific. Payments are made for specific objectives. I'm not a fan of the MOU because it's open-ended. It's carte blanche. And I'm not a fan of that. I've been paying attention to government in Rhode Island all my adult life, both city and state. And for the most part, I'm not impressed with how we spend our money. So I want more specificity. I would also like to see monies that are being contributed by the colleges to go towards projects and programs that would actually save the city money over a period of time, and that is not under consideration. There are a number of different projects, programs that I have in mind, but I only have 3 minutes, so I will only talk about one that's very immediate and that we need to act on now, because if we don't, next year, the money will go away and be spent. And this is called the Narragansett Bay Commission. It's our sewer authority. They run our sewage treatment plant. They don't run our sewers. Oh no, that's the city of Providence's responsibility. But they run the sewage treatment plant. And they also run the sewage treatment plant that serves Pawtucket Central Falls. That's located in Rumford. 50 years ago, Congress passed the Clean Water Act. Fishable and swimmable, we all want that. Most of the urban areas in the entire United States had combined systems, combined sewer and stormwater, which meant that, you know, when it rains a little bit, sewage treatment plants could take care of it and handle it. When it rains a lot in a short period of time, couldn't do it. So what do? How do we address this? Well, you would think that the simple, straightforward solution would be to diminish, deflect, delay, divert the amount of stormwater that goes into the sewer system all at one time, wait for the storm to pass, then you're good to go. No, that's not Narragansett Bay Commission's solution. What's their solution? Collect all the rainwater that falls on this corner of God's green earth, store it all, send it all to the sewage treatment plant, treat it all, and at what cost? They don't care, they just charge us all for it. The most expensive public works project in the history of the state around, you would have thought, at the very least, if you're an environmentalist, you would call for, require an environmental impact statement that looks at alternatives, combinations of alternatives. Try to be as cost efficient as possible. EPA recommends that. Narragansett Bay Commission didn't do it. City of Providence didn't insist on it. State government of Rhode Island didn't insist on it. And so, Narragansett Bay Commission built a tunnel under the Providence River, 3-mile-long tunnel from the sewage treatment plant going north on the Providence River, takes a dogleg to the west on the Woonasquatucket River, 3 miles long. Guess how much that tunnel cost? Most people guess $50, $60 million, and they're low. They say $100 million? Still low. $250 million to collect what? Mostly rainwater. 2 years after they built it, which was a decade ago, I asked Narragansett Bay Commission, what's the percentage? What did they say? 15% sewage, 85% rainwater. We're treating all this rainwater all the time, every year, and they're charging us for it. And their rate structure is very inequitable and downright discriminatory. That's another topic for another moment. They now want to build, and beginning to build, a second tunnel under the Pawtucket River. 2 miles long.
We got about a minute left.
30 seconds, okay. 2 miles long, but it's been a decade. So how much is that going to cost? Most people figure, okay, it's about the same. 300 million? $500 million. This is like aid to Ukraine realm. What the city council needs to say to the mayor and together needs to say to the state government, Narragansett Bay Commission, you're a creation of the state. Stop spending any more money on this tunnel. First comes an independent EIS, Environmental Impact Statement. The scientists at Brown University Center for Environmental Studies thought the first tunnel was a waste of money. We built it anyway. The scientists at URI's Bay campus think the second tunnel is a waste of money. We're in the process of building it anyway. So much for follow the science. We need to look at best practices. If all the urban areas in the United States were building tunnels and machinery, it would be here in the United States. It's not. We have to import it from overseas. That's the proof in the pudding. I call upon City Council, Finance Committee, to say that a scintilla of this money that is being discussed tonight go to fund an EIS right now, right away, without any more delay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Neonta Nepal. I live on 74 Transit Street, and I'm a current undergraduate student at Brown University and a co-president of Students for Educational Equity. And I'm here today to tell you that the Memorandum of Understanding that has been presented to you is just frankly disgraceful and disgusting. As someone who lives on College Hill and attends Brown University, I'm hyper aware of the wealth that has been hoarded by my institution. A student's position is unique. I am a community member and a resident of Providence, and I reap the benefits of being a Brown University student while recognizing that my university is paying a fraction of the amount that they would owe in property taxes. My university has committed to writing a slavery and justice report, but has barely acted on any of its recommendations. It took years to fulfill its $10 million promise to Providence Public Schools and acts like their work is charity, when in reality it should be a requirement. I have seen firsthand the impact this has had on Providence Public Schools when I spend my education classes studying why the state takeover had to take place and walk into Providence Public Schools to engage with youth. I am also a proud lead organizer at Arise and work with these youth regularly, and to hear the conditions that they have to go to while I'm sitting atop the hill makes me sick to my stomach every single time. I want to say that volunteering at these schools is not enough at all. After observing the disparity alongside other students, we have decided this is inexcusable as a student body. I have seen it as my personal responsibility to hold Brown accountable and make them pay their share to the host city that they occupy. Local youth deserve more, and I am here advocating for them. I have met them, and they are as deserving of a quality education as the college kids that are here today and that surround me on the daily. We live here, we take up space here, and we force a greater burden on taxpayers by not taking the financial burden that would be negligible for Brown but is harmful for everyone else in this community. My university claims to be grappling with its history and participating in the transatlantic slave trade, but refuses to agree to a suitable pilot payment that would help the city create better communities for its residents. Where public schools are predominantly composed of students of color, so the communities they are harming now by not paying their fair share are the ancestors of those impacted by the harm they are claiming to be reckoning with. How is this agreement not repeating the history that Brown participated in years ago? How can we not see that and hold them accountable? I was here last semester advocating for legislation to pass in regard to taxing our university endowment, and a provision in the pilot would prevent city council members from advocating for that in the next 20 years. We had 532 signatures and a variety of student groups backing this piece of legislation on our campus. This provision is actively constricting your voices and your ability to advocate for the communities that you represent. I support holding my university accountable for being a good neighbor, as they encourage us to do, but don't decide to do themselves. As students, we have been welcomed into this community, and it is our job to fight for it. So I ask that you review the agreement very carefully, because my institution is unfortunately known for taking advantage of the community that has given it a place to exist. And I hope that Brown hears my disgust with how they continue to take more than they give to Providence. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Jada Wooten. Name and the address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Jada Wooten. My address is 66 John Street. Members of the Finance Committee and of the Providence City Council and Providence community, I'm a senior at Brown University and one of the founding members of the current Brown Activist Coalition. I am here today to strongly urge you to vote no against the Memorandum of Understanding that is being presented to you. I am urging you to say no because of where I come from. I was born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is home to one of the top public universities, but simultaneously home to a large black-white achievement gap and several pockets of poverty which the university continues to push out. Since I grew up in a college town, I am especially cognizant of the ways that universities such as Brown hoard wealth and land from community members, and how that hoarding results in further injustices, and particularly today I'll be talking about educational injustices. The picture Brown paints of its community engagement does not adequately address the harm this institution has caused Providence, and it deeply disappoints me. I am deeply disappointed in Brown, my university, because it brags about being a trailblazer with the creation of the Slavery and Justice Report, but has barely acted on any of its recommendations. I am deeply disappointed in Brown, my university, because it took years to fulfill the $10 million promise to Providence Public Schools. A promise that should be a requirement, since we live here, we take up space here, and we force a greater burden on taxpayers by not taking financial responsibility. I am deeply disappointed in Brown, my university, because it claims to be grappling with its history of participating in the transatlantic slave trade, but refuses to agree on a suitable MOU that would help the city create a better community for its residents. I am deeply disappointed in Brown, my university, because how can you have a world-class education program and not want to give more to your local public schools, which are composed of 80% students of color and are directly being harmed by this lack of funding? I am deeply disappointed in Brown, my university, because the current agreement is set to repeat the institution's harm towards the community. I have been here since April 2022 advocating for legislation to pass in regard to taxing our university endowment. And a provision in the MOU would prevent city council members from advocating for that in the next 20 years. Not only is the provision taking away the ability of city council people to properly represent and advocate for the members of their districts, but it also constrains any future source of revenue to come from my university in the next 20 years. I have to repeat that, 20 years. I support holding my university accountable for being a good neighbor, and as students, we need to make sure that we're fighting for the community we have been welcomed into. I am urging you to say no to the current proposed MOU because of where I come from and because I know my university can do better than deep disappointment. Lastly, I want to note that I was one of 532 signatures the Activist Coalition collected that says Brown needs to do better by the Providence community. And unfortunately, many of the people who signed with me could not be here today because of the inaccessibility of City Hall as a building and because of the inaccessibility of weekday meetings. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Nick Lee. Nick, please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Nick Lee. I live at 69 Brown Street. I today call on the City Council to not pass the pilot agreement as it stands and make Brown University pay higher property taxes. As one of the largest hoarders of wealth in Providence, we sit as a college on the hill. Yet this new agreement offers a tiny fraction of our budget to Providence through 2023. Rather than provide you with more numbers, considering you've already been hit with a boatload of numbers that I hope you've already studied, I speak as a volunteer and as a new resident of Providence. Now, don't get me wrong, I chose Brown and the immense opportunities it offers, but these opportunities cannot come at a cost to the city and its community residents, and they won't if Brown is forced to pay more. I work twice a week at a community garden where we feed families who cannot get consistent produce on the table. I study Providence public schools in my education classes, which, as reported numerous times, are literally falling apart. And then I read Brown's Justice and Slavery Report and simultaneously serve as Brown's class president. I'm astounded by the amount of wealth inherent to our institution and the amount of wealth we are clenching in closed fists, specifically restricting it from students we have already withheld so much from. Before feeding Brown students, you have to feed Providence. On behalf of Brown, I apologize to Providence for not doing more to the community that breathes love and life into our institution. And as a student here, I ask that you make Brown do more. Now, like I said, I'm not a Providence resident. I come from far away. I come from a smaller town in California called Rancho Cucamonga. But when I left home, my teachers, they made me make a promise to them that wherever I go, to not forget the little man. This is what they would always tell me, don't forget the little man. That meant to watch out for your own, to treat your neighbors as your family, and to reciprocate the love a community offers. Today, I'm asking you to sign on to that agreement too, and to protect Providence students before you protect Brown. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Gabriella Venegas. Gabriella, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so hi, my name is Gabriela Venegas Ramirez. It was pretty close. Address is 69 Brown Street. Yeah, so I wrote a script because I will forget. But yeah, I'm a sophomore at Brown, here on behalf of the Student Labor Alliance and the Brown Activist Coalition. I just want to start by saying that yes, I'm not technically a citizen of Providence, like many of us students are, but I'll be here for another 3 years, and then I'll go. But I'm from New York City, from Harlem, the Columbia University area, and I've met and worked with enough community members here in Providence. So I know firsthand the damage that large institutions, or should I say corporations, like Brown, like Columbia, are capable of doing. I know the way they can push people out of their homes. I know the way they can destroy communities. And also, just fully evade taxes, but we'll get to that. Yeah, so I've met people here in Providence who can barely afford to pay rent, who are having to move to Florida because their city, their home, only becomes more and more unlivable. I've met students from this city's public schools who can barely afford to eat, let alone to dream of having an education like the one me and my peers have access to. And all the while, these universities continue to devour the city, forcing citizens to make up for their own failure to pay taxes and pushing them out of their homes. And hold up, also, their power will go unchecked, possibly for another 20 years, meaning when I'm 39 years old. I hope you guys understand that. In a complete undermining of democracy, blocking legislators from representing the people, which we've already told you guys. So yeah, I urge you to not pass this MOU. We cannot continue protecting large institutions at the expense of people. This is already being done enough throughout the country. So, just letting you all know, soon Providence will become so unaffordable. You'll have no one left to represent but Christina Paxton, so yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Matisse Dovat. Am I saying that right? M-A-T-I-S-S-E-D-O-V-A-T. Matisse Dovat. Here. Going once. Matisse Dovat. Going twice. Matisse Dovat. Going 3 times. Next, we have Arthur Flanders. Arthur, please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name's Arthur Flanders, 158 Door Street here in Providence. I want to start by saying how grateful I am to be a Providence resident. This is truly one of the greatest cities in the world. The food, the arts, they're all easy talking points that sell Providence. And it feels real cliche to say, but the magic here is in the people. We're a big city in a compact state, and that means by our very nature, we're forced to live in intentional community. And I'm proud to be a member of that community. It is a responsibility, and it is what we owe to one another. But as it stands right now, Brown and other institutions are not fully honoring that responsibility. The money that these institutions owe the city is not charity. It is not a gift of benevolence doled out at their convenience. It is a deep debt that has stratified Providence's inequities for centuries. These institutions talk a big game about equity, about creating a better world, but as it stands right now, they're operating like hedge funds with an education side hustle. The fact of the matter is, as so many have pointed out this evening, that the amounts laid out in this plan are far from sufficient. It doesn't account for inflation, it exempts these institutions, to which our city gives so much, from being accountable to us. It's fiscal irresponsibility and would cause harm to the city that we all care about so very much. I love Providence. I'm proud to have put roots down here, and I work hard to serve this community by upholding my civic responsibilities, speaking out, getting involved, paying my fair share of taxes. So have, presumably, each of the people in this room. Brown has been here for over 250 years. I think it's time for them to step up. And as the City Council, it is your duty to hold them to that, and I urge you to all be good stewards and to vote down this program. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Ashub. Sorry.
Abood had to leave because of timing constraints, but he was wondering if it'd be okay if I spoke his testimony out, or if I can submit it as a written still.
I don't care. Oh, go ahead.
I can say it? Okay. I'm just going to read directly from what he sent me. Honorable members of the City Council of Providence, my name is Abood Ashab, and I live on 69 Brown Street, and I am a junior. I stand before you today as a concerned citizen who deeply cares about the well-being of our city, particularly in light of the challenges that have arisen due to the presence of the esteemed institutions like Brown University, Johnson Wales University, and Rhode Island School of Design in downtown Providence. While these universities undoubtedly bring prestige and opportunities to our city, it is evident that they have played a significant role in driving up living costs and eroding the affordability of our community. Affordable housing has become increasingly scarce, and the lack of public services, as mentioned earlier, has placed additional burdens on residents who are struggling to make ends meet. It is imperative that these institutions, which have thrived in our city, acknowledge their roles in these issues and take proactive steps to give back to the community. The 2022 COVID-19 pandemic inflicted severe economic and social hardships on our city, from which we have yet to fully recover. I ask, what have these universities done to alleviate that situation? Are they assisting tenants struggling with rent? Unfortunately, the reality is quite the opposite. The rising rent rates in the city are, in part, a result of the demand created by these institutions. Many residents have been forced to reallocate due to the increasing cost of living. Furthermore, it is essential that these institutions address the fair treatment of their employees. The recent strikes by RISD custodial staff are emblematic of the need for fair wages and reasonable working conditions for all employees, not just a privileged few. I implore the City Council to engage these universities in meaningful conversations about their responsibilities to the broader Providence community. It is not enough for them to exist within our city. They must actively contribute to making Providence a place for everyone, not just a privileged few. As I would like to emphasize that I will not be here in 3 years, and the students on Hope High School will be, and so will their families, and so will the workers who commute on the RIPTA every day and the tenants. Thank you for your attention to these pressing matters, and I look forward to seeing positive change for our city and its residents. Sincerely, Abood.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael Kearney. Michael, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. Hi, my name is Michael Kearney. I live on De Pasquale Avenue in Ward 13, and I'm here to testify against the Memorandum of Understanding. First, I just want to say thank you to all the other counselors who are here who aren't on the Finance Committee, who are paying attention to this issue. So we've heard about how Brown, under this new agreement, would only pay $8.7 million per year instead of the $50 million they would owe if taxed. And here's the deal about that. not only is Brown not paying its fair share under this new agreement, but it doesn't even begin to cover the value that Brown extracts from this city. We have heard about how much Brown has contributed in payments over the last 20 years, but it's actually Providence residents who pay the property taxes that fund the city's services that Brown relies on. And we've heard about how Brown provides jobs to people in Providence and Rhode Island, but it's the other way around. It's the people of the city who do the labor that allows Brown to function. And we've heard about how Brown funds programs at hospitals and schools, and about how that has affected the lives in a positive way of some of our city's residents. But Brown also then uses those programs and the people who need them as just a laboratory for its curriculum. And we haven't even talked about how Brown is getting the privilege of parking management and the deed to literal public streets, like land that is worth millions and millions of dollars, as part of these agreements. So $50 million a year isn't the most that Brown should do. It's the very least that they should be doing. I also want to talk about some problems in the fine print of the voluntary contributions that are getting missed. So on top of the monetary payments to the city, Brown is also supposed to make community investments of about the same amount of money per year. The problem is that that includes tax revenue from private businesses in properties that Brown owns. So that's like tax revenue that the city deserves anyway on untaxed land, and it's considered a community investment by Brown. That's ridiculous. It also includes the cost of snow removal on Brown's campus. I don't think that's an investment in our communities. And also, because there's no oversight of these investments, they only happen in the neighborhoods around Brown, even though it's citizens citywide who are paying the taxes to support Brown. So I don't think that Brown should get to run the city or decide how our money is spent. They shouldn't get to decide which projects in our communities get funded and how much. That's the job of the people of the city and the city council on their behalf. So I urge this committee and the council at large to make 3 specific changes to the memorandum. First, I think that half of the pilot money that comes in from from the university should be set aside for participatory budgeting and divided between neighborhoods across the city so that the whole city would if Brown were just being taxed. Second, I think that the city council should remove the 20-year ban on legislating on matters relating to Brown, including taxation, so that if things change, your hands are not tied. And third, I think that you should change the pilot agreement so that Brown pays the full $50 million per year that it owes the city. And if Brown won't agree, then just scrap the deal and start taxing them. Thanks.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Timothy Moore. Timothy Moore, upstairs here. A second, because someone just left upstairs, but I'm not sure that's Timothy Moore. Timothy Moore, are you here? Timothy Moore going once. Timothy Moore going twice. Timothy Moore going 3 times. Next, we have Jeremy Costa. Jeremy, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. Well, my name is Jeremy Costa. I'm in capacity as a local advocate and activist in the community. I'm sure you guys are very aware. I've been at a lot of your meetings here in the chambers and also in the smaller offices. And I'm very surprised that we're even here today and not sitting down in front of a full committee, task force, commission We're talking about $100 million, $200 million 20-year plan, and we don't have a commission established for this, a task force. There should be guidelines that are set for this particular MUA, whatever you want to call this agreement here. You know, the things that I'm surprised about is that most of the body of people that are speaking are actually from the institution itself that is not paying the taxes. And, you know, it's their parents, their education that's actually paying or that's not paying. And they're saying, look, tax us. And we're sitting here having a discussion without having the proper metrics, without having a proper analysis. You know, when we're doing PFM reports trying to, you know, make sure that the police have their budget, we got 1,000 different analytics that we're using to make sure we got a task force to make sure they get their budget. But when it comes to the students and the people in Providence, they don't care. Let's just steamroll through the procedure. Let's just bulldoze through it and let's get it over with. No, we need a complete community engagement. Very similar to how we had the opera fund money. We had $127 million allocated. We had a 3-month commission that actually went over specific items in regards to the agreements that were going to be allocated. We should have this. We shouldn't have to be bulldozed through a situation where we have 2 weeks to respond to the community in regards to $100 to $200 million endowment. You're costing taxpayers millions of dollars. Let me just give you some numbers, just because I was really shocked that, you know, there was no commission established for this agreement. You know, let me just give you some numbers here. You know, and clearly it says, yet it is the city dweller, more generally the resident of the jurisdiction, that grants the property exemption. We grant the property exemption. The taxpayers do. They don't control this agreement. Voluntarily, no, it's not. The only reason why we're having this discussion is because there was talks in regards to state legislation from Mayor Smiley that he was going to tax the employment of each and every new employee. So all of a sudden, we ran into this agreement. This agreement was canceled in 2022. We're talking about this because he wants to steamroll through the process, because those employees that the institutions will hire will be taxed on their acceptance or whatnot. So all of a sudden now we're rushing through the system. No. We need to look at the taxable entities. We need to look at the medical facilities that are escaping all this conversation. They all need to be thrown into the basket because they're all taking up 60% of the taxable land that these people are having to afford the bill on. So we need to get back to this drawing board. We need not to steamroll, not to bulldoze through the situation. We need to look at this fiscally responsibly. We don't need anybody from the outside that is associated with the institution whatsoever making the decisions. All these third parties that are coming in that are getting their little contribution from Brown. We don't even need your opinion because that's contrary to what we're trying to talk about here. We're trying to support the students and this institution, specifically Brown. These students are amazing, you know, and we need those students in those schools, in those elementary schools, in those middle schools, getting these kids civically engaged. That's where we should be spending the money.
1 minute left.
Yeah. And most importantly, you know, I said I was going to give you numbers. The average cost for 1 acre of land in Rhode Island right now is $176,000. Let me just give you the numbers. Johnson & Wales sits on 100 acres of land. Rhode Island College sits on 138 acres. Brown University sits on 180 acres. Providence College, which is not in the agreement, sits on about 180 acres. We have these institutions that are involved in taking up a lot of our land.
30 seconds.
It's time that the people activate the city council and start taxing these institutions. On a yearly basis, we're getting taxed at 18.5%, a 55 cent per thousand increase with a 3% or 4% inflation cost every year for the next 10 years. I would like to have a 10, 20-year agreement on my tax rate. Anyways, you guys need to get back to the drawing board. This is not the place. We need a commission.
Thank you for your testimony. Justin Royas. Staying so late, Justin. I know it's past the baby's bedtime, but.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. I know you all know who I am, but on the record, Justin Royas, resident of Providence, Providence City Councilor of Ward 4, also known as the North End. I just want to thank you all for holding this hearing. I'm going to conclude my remarks by talking about the process. But first, I would like to talk about my concerns regarding this agreement, many of which you all have heard about. Under this agreement, these institutions, Brown, PC, RISD, and JWU, have tossed a collective 9% breadcrumb of their potential tax contributions into our city's coffers, which is a pitiful fraction of what they would owe if they played by the same rules as our hardworking residents and small businesses in the city. Sure, they can hide behind their nonprofit status, which they do, but we know that these institutions are profit-hungry corporations that have relentlessly exploited our city's resources while offering us mere scraps in return. Approving this agreement without changes would make us accessories to this greed. The proposed cash contributions in this MOU agreement are not just insulting, they are downright disrespectful to the financial struggles of our residents endure every day thanks to these institutions' unchecked expansion. The so-called community contributions in this agreement are laughable and inadequate, and anyone celebrating them as a breakthrough is living in a fantasy world. In terms of their community contributions, this agreement allows these institutions to cook the books and assign arbitrary values to their supposed community benefits. In fact, we have a lot of Brown students here tonight. Under this agreement, Brown University can take credit, quantify their civic engagement for them being here tonight. As they have always done. Brown University has always taken credit of the free labor of their students. Under the community contributions portion, we know that these institutions are likely to use aggressive accounting tricks to inflate their numbers because there's no clear methodology on how they would quantify their benefits. And perhaps what is more egregious is that we have allowed them to count commercial tax revenue as a community contribution. That's a whole new level of insanity. And I'd like to talk about the fine print of this agreement. After speaking to several lawyers, it's crystal clear that this flimsy, non-binding deal has tied our hands in every way imaginable. In the next 20 years, we can't reclaim the money they promise us if they fall short of their promise. We can't ask them for another dime in the next 20 years. We can't adjust zoning laws to rein in their unchecked expansion. And we can't charge them for municipal services or even publicly push, in our capacity as city councilors, for changes to their tax-exempt status. And as I said 2 weeks ago, this is a gag order on our political voices for the next 2 decades, and giving this agreement a nod would be a disgrace. The attorneys representing these corporate giants have cunningly stacked the deck in their favor. Accepting this deal, as is, colleagues, would be a betrayal of the trust our constituents have placed in us. Now let me conclude my remarks by getting back to the process. Let's talk about the so-called negotiation process. that brought us here today. As you all know, the mayor and his administration negotiated this agreement with these institutions for months, yet they spring this agreement on us in a matter of weeks. And to add insult to injury, we're told we can't touch it. We can't make amendments to it. And some of us have, tiptoed around these colleges at the negotiation table. But if we can't make amendments, it's fair to question if there was any real negotiation to begin with. So here's the truth. The administration set up a meeting between some of us and the college before letting us see the agreement. They even had a press conference before we saw the agreement.
1 minute left.
And all we heard at this meeting were pleas of poverty coming from these institutions. So my question to the committee and to the body is simple. If we can't shape this deal to benefit our city, why are we here today? Why are we considering this? The public hearing seems nothing more than a charade. If the council is shut out of this process, then let the mayor sign this half measure alone, so future councils won't be muzzled in our fight to work with our State House colleagues to challenge their tax-exempt status, so we can finally tax these institutions and not have to depend on these breadcrumb pile agreements. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Knight Molten Guard. I'm saying that wrong, but 503 Elmwood Avenue. Here. Knight Molten Guard from 503 Elmwood Avenue. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Next, we have 138 Penn Street. Looks like GE. That's it. Come on down. If you are sitting upstairs and you're going to speak and you're on the list, it'd be easier if you came down. So it is getting kind of late. Thank you. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi there, my name is Gregory Waxmolsky. I'm at 138 Penn Street. Doesn't this feel good? God, I'm glad to be in the room with you all tonight. And all of you. And all of you. And to everybody that showed up here tonight, whatever the community that they came from, it's really great to be out here tonight holding space. So, this finance committee is really strong this year. I'm really, really excited in the work that you guys are going to do, holding down the legislative branch of a 3-part government. We've had nothing wrong with our executive branch, but you need to tell them it's not good enough. The first round, we're not interested. Keep your power. Everybody here who came out from Brown, we look forward to seeing you out again. Everybody who came out from your neighborhoods, good to know you. Everybody's against this. I heard from cops tonight against it. The former counselor from the North End, Nick, what's his name? He doesn't like Brown. I heard him speaking out about Brown for years, wanting to make sure that we challenge the power here. Thanks for helping the city council appreciate that they do have a role to play in all this, and that they're really, we're counting on them. Because we don't want to take this energy down to Silver Lake and tell people how you lost $90 million. We don't want to take this energy out to your neighborhood, tell people how you lost all this money, and hamstrung yourselves. It seems like not the right thing to do. But whose house is this? It's our house. Thank you all for being here. We're going to keep on coming back. Again, send it back. Tell them no. Tell them go again. Tell them try harder this time. They're going to do it, and they'll bring you something that you can actually vote on. We believe in you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Representative Enrique Sanchez.
Thank you, council members, for giving us the opportunity to testify tonight, for allowing community residents, students, constituents, and stakeholders, and giving testimony, whether in support or opposition. My name is Enrique Sanchez, State Representative, House District 9. I am here because I am very concerned about the future of our city, about the well-being, the socioeconomic well-being of our constituents in the North End, on the East Side, South Side, Silver Lake, West End, Oneyville, Hartford Park, Elmwood, and across all the parts of the city. This administration, the mayor's administration, was reluctant to raise taxes without providing any incentives for constituents, for residents, while allowing tax breaks for commercial property owners. There was no transparency, no communication with the city council. There was no coming to the table with the city council. There was no involving the city council in this process, and I find that disrespectful. Now, we're negotiating this pilot program, the MOU, the MOA, and there is, again, no involvement of the city council. It seems like this is a forced entry to try to pass these tax breaks for more universities to get more tax breaks throughout the next 20 years. I hope the city council is involved in the process, is involved in the community involvement when you guys have to take on taxing the hospitals, Lifespan and Care New England. And I know that's going to be a little more difficult. These private universities use tons of city services funded by Providence taxpayers. Their tax breaks always force working families to pay more. The city had to increase taxes this year because these massive institutions have never paid taxes in the first place. $170 million over the next 20 years is nothing compared to how inflation rates are rising. A 3% increase from 8% to 11% is garbage. If you look into the MOU, you see sections there where it says, Brown shall be eligible to reduce its annual voluntary payments in each year as provided for in Section 2, payments to the city by 50% of new tax revenue each year. So that's basically saying that they're going to be given the option to be forced out of these tax credits, that $8 million is nothing each year as each year is accumulated. Councilman Espinal, in the south side, we're seeing Roger Williams University buying up property, our communities being priced out of their communities. Councilwoman Shelley Peterson, Councilman Royas, Councilman, who else is here? Oh, Althea Graves, Councilwoman Althea Graves. We know that in the North End, around Providence College, Strive Corporation is buying up a lot of properties, and their prices are raising our communities out. Councilman Goncalves, on the east side, you've been dealing with Brown University, continue to buy up property.
1 minute left.
Yep. Continue to buy up property and forcing our communities out. And then Councilman Vargas, we're dealing with the repercussions of many people from the east side moving to the west end, moving to Oneyville, moving to Silver Lake, moving to Hartford, and our communities, again, being forced to be priced out. Last year, when I was campaigning, I remember seeing on my voters list a number of people who had home ownership around many houses in the West End. All those people, Spanish names, were not living there anymore. About 20, 30 people in one voting list. That is when you realize that we need to take the economic disparities into consideration. This is not about race or background, ethnicity, gender, etc. This is about economic.
30 seconds.
I think many of our communities face the economic hardships. It doesn't matter what background you're from. all our communities are living the high cost of living, are feeling the burnt of high commercial properties, of high ownership properties, and this pandemic, these high rents, high mortgages. So I just ask you all to please, this MOU is honestly tone deaf. It's a slap, a disrespect to our communities, and I hope that when the battle, well, actually, you know what? I hope that you force this and you come and the contract is ended and there's an opportunity for the city council to be involved with these contracts, and then the future as well with the Lifespan and Care New England, the hospital contracts. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. David Morales. Representative Dave Morales, if you could state your name and address and try to keep it within 3 minutes.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is David Morales, address 146 Mount Pleasant Avenue, Providence, Rhode Island, 02908. And I'm here today in my capacity as a state representative for the city of Providence, asking that the fellow members of the Finance Committee take the necessary step to amend the administration's proposed pilot MOU, considering the alarming details that are found within the agreement. Because make no mistake, the administration has done an incredible job controlling the narrative around this MOU. They have cited it as being overwhelmingly generous to the taxpayers, generous to the city. But the reality is, this MOU does not go nearly far enough, as it should, to actually support our city and the people that live here. Now again, considering the immense wealth and amount of property owned by these institutions, it is underwhelming to see that they would pay just $177 million over 20 years through this MOU. And while that figure currently represents 11.6% of what these institutions would otherwise pay in property taxes, using FY23 figures, the reality is that this percentage value is going to quickly diminish over the 20 years of this agreement, because these institutions are going to continue to expand their footprint, even if there is continued discussion saying that there are no plans for immediate expansion. We have seen it year after year. Expansions and proposals can come in very quickly and be approved relatively quickly. So with that said, there are two major issues with the MOU payments. One is that the institutions are simply not contributing enough, because they should be contributing roughly 20% of what they would otherwise pay in property taxes, which would be closer to a value of $300 million over the course of 20 years. Next, this MOU does not account for any future property growth, which means that the institutions can continue to expand and essentially remove property from the tax rolls without experiencing much financial accountability. But in contrast, if you are a commercial or residential property owner and you buy additional property, you are going to naturally pay more in your property taxes. Therefore, this agreement should be amended to increase the contributions made to the city while including a mechanism to account for future growth. The next layer of this agreement with alarming concerns is a clause in Section 7 that would prevent city officials from introducing, advocating, or supporting local or state-level initiatives to alter the tax exemption status of the institutions. As the state lead sponsor for legislation to tax the large endowments of private universities, which has garnered support from city officials and has even garnered a city resolution in support this past legislative session, I find it insulting that hidden in this MOU, there is a contingency, there is a condition, essentially saying that the city will now be forced to suppress their own political speech and halter any legislative action. Therefore, this agreement should be amended to remove this clause and allow for city officials to act by what they believe is in the best interest of Providence. Another issue that is similar in nature are the zoning restrictions, also referenced in Section 7, which would prohibit the city from not making any zoning changes that would reduce the areas where colleges can operate. As a legislator representing parts of the Elmhurst neighborhood where Providence College is located, I find this requirement to be overreaching, as it would not allow for city councilors to apply the feedback that they are hearing from their neighbors as it relates to the pace and the nature of an institution's growth. Therefore, this agreement should be amended to remove this zoning language and ensure that the city is able to maintain control over zoning, as it is a basic function that city government is responsible for, and it is a function that should never be given up to any special interest. So all that said, this MOU proposal has major growth areas, from the amount of money that institutions would contribute to the restrictions around legislative action, in addition to the restrictions around action related to zoning.
1 minute left.
So if this finance committee does not have the authorization to amend this MOU, then I would expect that the committee is able to take some of these recommendations in addition to the feedback that you've heard from our neighbors today and submit that feedback directly back to the mayor's office and share that it is time to go back to the negotiating table to ensure that these conditions are not a part of this 20-year agreement. Because we have heard over and over from the folks who are testifying here today, there are going to be major consequences over the next 2 decades if this is to be rubber stamped. And even though this deal has been highlighted as being overly generous, better than any deal in the history of the city, we have to recognize that a lot has changed from the last agreement. A lot has changed in terms of the growth of property and wealth from the respective institutions, in addition to the ongoing inflation
30 seconds.
and the economic conditions that our city is facing. And we are in a situation right now where, unfortunately, the economic outlook for our city does not point towards a positive future. It is not one of sustainability. When we talk about the pension, when we talk about other financial responsibilities and obligations. Therefore, this is the moment that the council has to exercise advocacy and ensure that we are getting the best deal possible for the working people and families in our city. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Councilwoman Shelley Peterson.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Shelley Peterson. I represent the 14th Ward here in our great city. I also represent Robert F. Kennedy Dolphins, EQ Panthers, Beasley Street Lions, and the Providence College Friars. As written, this MOU does not give us or future councils an opportunity to give the city and its residents a fair shot. The reality of this agreement and these institutions, the reality of this agreement with these institutions is that these 4 academic institutions own a total value of $3.9 billion in tax-exempt property in the city. If they were taxed at city rates, it would be $95 million per year between all 4 of these institutions. The reality is that we cannot. In the event that the city should need it, this agreement will not allow us to obtain any additional financial support. If the state created a law to enable us more financial support, we wouldn't even be able to adopt it. With the way the cost of living is this truly fair? We could not, as an administration or a council, advocate for more. It would literally be a gag order on the pure foundation of what we do as democratic officials elected to advocate for our communities. We'd have no input on their expansion. As the council person for an area that's affected by college expansion and by student housing development daily, this is pivotal to the vitality of my ward. I want to commend the parties that actually came and put forward the hard work. This is just the start. I think we need to see this as just the start. We need to take this document and make it better by not binding our future councils or the city in hasty ways that will be detrimental to our residents. I do want to commend and I do want to say I keep hearing about all these wonderful contributions that the institutions have made, and I can attest to many of them. My community has benefited and been able to enjoy some of the contributions made by our college locally. But let's take the rose-colored glasses off for a second and let's just remember that they should contribute because they can. End of discussion. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you for your testimony. Tony Unger. Tony, state your name, address, and 3 minutes, please.
Hi there, my name is Tony Unger, and I'm quite pleased to live at 274 South Main Street. I am also the co-chair of the Rhode Island Democratic Socialists of America. First of all, I'd like to ask everyone here opposed to this agreement to join us again in a few weeks to testify against the pilot proposal for our city's hospitals and to help make sure that the cancellation of medical debt is a condition for any such agreement. That digression aside, I will keep my remarks mercifully brief. It's been said a lot tonight, particularly by representatives of large business interests, that Brown University contributes significantly to Providence. And sure, it does, in a sense. It provides a very good education to the children of our city's rich. It provides payouts to large construction companies to build state-of-the-art dorms, and it draws in rich young consumers to our city's businesses, though, as service people know, they rarely tip 20%. But, as it happens, it has also expelled our city's vibrant Portuguese community out of Fox Point. It's driven up rents around the east side to the point where only the sons and daughters of the ultra-rich staying in Providence for a carefree 4-year vacation can afford to live there. Brown also stands perversely a few blocks down from Hope High School, which is in perennial existential trouble. Sure, Providence Public Schools remain in financial crisis, but at least Brown occasionally throws them the scraps from the interest on its endowment as a phony show of goodwill. And, above all, Brown functions mainly as a hedge fund and property investment company with a vestigial college attached. I'm sure the investors and board members in the room are quite happy about that. And after all of this, Brown has the gall to ask Providence to provide it with, essentially, a massive transfusion of funds over a 20-year period. The fact that, as my comrade State Representative Sanchez, who had to leave, brought up, this agreement was negotiated behind closed doors and presented to council members as an accomplished fact should give you some idea about its content. The only purpose of an educational institution is to serve the people of Providence and never the other way around. This agreement is not a reflection of the wants and needs of Providence residents. It reflects only the desires of the wealthy and will serve only to line their pockets. The pilot agreement is an insult and an affront to our city's workers and tenants. Make no mistakes about it, folks. This is class war, and if the agreement goes through, it will be the working class's loss.
Thank you for your testimony. Next is Terry Wright. Terry, please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Terry Wright, and I live at 50 Prairie Avenue, in Providence. I just really want to start by saying this is what it looks like. The infrastructure of Providence and a rich university with a tax break. Not taxing Brown is going to continue to cause more harm, all at the cost of taxpayers' money. We cannot reverse the harm, but we can stop the harm and begin to repair displacement in Providence communities. Looking at the housing crisis, look at the housing crisis and look at the people forced to live outside. Student rentals, pushing families out of their neighborhoods, causing gentrification. Death is happening under that umbrella. I believe in a beautiful city of Providence with housing for all. That's my day job as a director of DARE, Direct Action for Rights and Equalities, Tenant and Homeowners Association. Housing is a human right, that's what we believe in. But right now, I'm thinking about the Superman building and its tax break, voted on right here in this room. And then just to add insult to injury, I'm also thinking about the damage moving forward if Brown University is given this tax break. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Kinverly DeCupe. Probably saying that wrong, but could state your name and address and 3 minutes, please.
Yes, my name is Kimberly DeCoupe. My address is 560 Prospect Street. If you know Providence, and you should since you're counselors, you would know that that address is not from Providence. But I'm here today because I've worked a lot of years in Providence, and I have a lot of family in Providence. And so what happens in this city is very important, and it often sets examples for other cities. I'm not going to say anything surprising. I think the agreement sucks. That's what it is. It sucks. And I guess I'm just thinking about, I've done a lot of activist work in my past. I'm still doing activist work. That's why I'm here. And I've heard a lot of, how do I say, whenever we try to solve an issue, whether it's housing, education, climate, the first thing that elected officials tell us or other folks in power is, that sounds great. We feel really bad that that person right there has to be homeless. Oh my God, their toe is amputated because it's cold. We feel really bad. It's just that we don't have the money for the solutions. That is the line that always gets touted. Oh yes, it sucks that, a lot of our minority folks live in basically hoods, let's be honest. And that really sucks, but we just don't have the money. If we had the money, we would totally fix that issue. And then we get to issues like this one, right? Where we have a very large corporation. I'm not even sure we can call this an educational institution, because for many Ivies like Brown, education is a side hustle. Their main hustle is investment. That's how you get to, an endowment that's over $1 billion. And so it disgusts me that we're able to tell people who are struggling, right? People who have lost toes and fingers. This just happened last year. And we're telling those people, we don't have the money for the solution that you need, while we have, Brown right here, and we refuse to tax them. But we didn't refuse to tax homeowners. I think it was, this year, we raised taxes. Providence raised taxes on residential buildings, right? That's gonna hit a lot of homeowners. So folks know how to raise taxes on folks, who are struggling to pay for their mortgage. You have no problem angering your own constituents, right? But you got a problem angering Brown. Why? Do you get votes from Brown? I just don't understand. I don't want to hear this excuse anymore of we don't have the money. We are the richest country in the history of human civilization, all right? Rhode Island is a state of that country, the richest country in the history of the world. There has never been a country richer than us. There has never been. And you're telling me that with that kind of money, this is the kind of budget constraints that we're seeing. It's a lie, all right? We allow folks to basically accumulate this kind of money. We allow institutions as well to accumulate this kind of money, and then we don't tax them at all. But we tax folks who are in the middle class. If you're earning $80,000, a year, you know what the taxes are here. They're not, they're not little taxes. Those are pretty decent taxes. I mean, I pay 33% in taxes. You know what the most I've ever earned? $40,000. So you're willing to have me, somebody who earns $40,000, right, in your city, I gotta pay 33%, right? But Brown gets these kind of percentages. Brown, I mean, we heard it. Brown should really be paying $100 million a year. That's what it is, especially if they want to act as an investment company. I mean, we have to get it together, folks. I hear a lot of politicians talk about, oh, the American people, they're getting so radical. They don't want to listen to us. They're talking about socialism and other weird stuff.
1 minute left.
People are talking about that stuff because they're losing faith in the institutions, and it's because of stuff like this. People elect you to, pursue the interests of the public, and you go out there and you pursue the interests of the billionaire class. So for what reason do we pay your salary? Ask Brown to pay your salary, right? Because if you work for Brown, Brown should pay your salary. Don't sit here and tell me there's no money. And don't sit here and tell me that you don't understand why people, not only in this state, but in this country, don't trust the institutions. You know why. You know the corruption that moves through this building. Don't act like a lot of folks don't get elected with this kind of money. And of course, Brown doesn't, hand you campaign contributions, but they have a lot of power over you. clearly. I'm just saying, if we want to, do what's best for the city and we really care about our finances, then we need to vote this agreement down. I mean, my personal opinion is we shouldn't have this agreement. Why isn't Brown just paying regular taxes? Why? I got to pay them, right? Because if they don't have to pay them, then you can let me know so I don't have to pay taxes like this, right? I can maybe just pay like $5.
Can you wrap it up, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Next is Javier Nino Sears. Javier Nino Sears. He had to leave. Thank you. Anybody else that wants to speak that didn't sign up or did sign up? Please come up, sign the sheet. Is there any more names on there? No. Just
hello.
hold on, just sign this sheet real quick. And no further people after this, right? Everybody's all set? That wants to speak has spoken? Please state your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes, please.
Okay, my name is Axel Burrito, and my address is 69 Brown Street. And personally, I disgust myself. I really hate that I'm a Brown student. And I feel like everyone here should feel disgusted. We choose to attend this university. We don't have to attend it. We don't have to pay tuition. We don't have to be here. It's just a name on a piece of paper. But I choose my career, my future, over the people of Brown. And then I have the gal to come up here and tell me as a Brown student, as Brown, as someone who benefits from Brown, I say, let us tax us. It's like, I know that this isn't going to change anything. I know that this is just performatory. Everything Brown does is performatory. Everything that's happening right now is performatory. Brown allows this to happen because it's performatory. At the end of the day, nothing will change. I will get my diploma. I will get that little seal from Brown University. And the people of Providence will get next to nothing. And that's okay. That's okay for all of us here, honestly, because we choose to be here. We choose to be here. We choose to continue attending Brown, and we choose not to have more moral outrage. We do nothing. We could just, I don't know, go to a different university. We could go to community college. We could go to state school. I could go to state school. Like, that's a very valid option, but we choose not to. And it's up to us as students, as Brown, to boycott Brown. I don't think it's up to the council. The council, the council is clearly in the pocket of Brown University. So, it's up to us. But we won't do anything about it. We'll just come up here and say, please tax us. Please tax us. Anyways, that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody want to speak that didn't speak? Going once, going twice. I'd like to thank everybody who came out tonight and spoke either for or against it. Thank my colleagues, thank the city clerks, and at this point, the meeting is over. Thank you.